Starting with the occupancy widget in dashboard, this currently gets information from Hotsoft, and the occupancy figure is calculated in Hotsoft and then pushed to dashboard. So there's no calculations happening on the dashboard side at the moment. So what we see here on the screen is the simplified view. So just to give the hotel a quick indication of where they're at for their occupancy figures. So 22% isn't great, of course, but we all understand why. There's also a threshold where we can see a comparison to the previous year. And this is something that you can edit on a customer basis when it should be viewed as red as it does here. So something that you should act on or be aware of. So right now it's just if it's less than the previous year, will show as red, but you can adjust this per hotel. There's lots of different options in here. And you can also add an alert to be notified if it goes above or beyond a certain comparison figure. So the comparison itself with basically all the widgets that we have that get data from Hotsoft is that it's based on weekday comparison. So basically, we always compare the same day of the week with the previous year. So this is showing yesterday, so it's the 23rd of April, 2020, but it's comparing that to a Thursday, end of April, 2019. So it's not comparing the 23rd with the 23rd, because then you can get very different figures, of course. If you're comparing a Sunday to a Monday, the values will most likely be very different. So we're trying to compare like to like rather than date to date. And this is across the board for the Hotsoft comparison widgets. To expand on this from the simplified view, you can click here and change the widget view to enlarged, which will then display a longer period and some more information. So you still have the occupancy figures. So we can see the 23rd here, 22%, but it's showing a longer period of time, and you can adjust that at the bottom here. So if you want to do 14 days, 7 days, whatever you prefer, how detailed you want to go or how long you want to go. This is also showing additional information. So it's showing the guest nights for the same dates. So the difference between a guest night and a room night comes into play when you have more than one person staying in a room. So this is counting all the people staying in the hotel and not just each room that's been occupied. So as we can see here, with the current situation in the world, I think this hotel were still open almost as normal at the end of March, and then it's steadily declined from there. Now I think they're basically closed. These views can be viewed both as a bar and as a graph. So you have that option as well. So moving on from we've viewed the simplified view and the enlarged view. So now we can take a look at the widget drill down where we get even more detail than before. So we still have the same occupancy rate for yesterday. That will always be displayed regardless of the dates you select. But then we also have a room nights comparison to the previous year. So we can see that they were doing a lot better the same period last year than they're doing now, which is as expected, I would say. And we can also look at the occupancy percentage, how that changes between the previous year and now. And we have the number of guests, so the guest nights. Here you have options to also customize the period. So maybe you want to look at dates where you had more guests. So here we can see where, if we go back to January, I've just picked a hotel in Sweden just to show you an example. So we can see here that beginning of the year doing almost exactly the same as the year before. It was following the same trend, but then it changed probably in March. So we can see the graph start to differ here, end of March. And if we go to April, it's probably going to be a lot more of a difference. Yes. And at the bottom here, we have the actual values for each day. If you want the details for that. You can, of course, just hover over in the graph and get the same figures. So that is the occupancy widget in a nutshell. So where do these figures come from? So I mentioned that they come from Hotsoft. So this is not the same Hotsoft database as the hotel I was just showing you in dashboard. So I'm just going to show you the principle of where the figures come from. So we're not going to be able to compare because I don't have access to the Swedish database that I just showed you. But in Hotsoft, we have the option to calculate occupancy figures in different ways. So what we can do is that we can choose which reservation statuses include and to exclude. So let me show you that setting in Hotsoft. So these are the different options that you have on the Hotsoft side. So you can choose between all of these different options. So for example, if you choose occupancy G, it will include confirmed, provisional and allotments. And it will divide that by your for sale rooms, but it will exclude any blocked rooms that you have. So if you're using the blocked functionality in Hotsoft, for example, if you're closing rooms for refurbishment, or if some maintenance is needed in a room for some reason, you can use the blocked feature. And what this particular occupancy calculation does, it will exclude those rooms, so we'll only count the rooms that are actually open. Compare that to occupancy H. It will include all the rooms that you have in your hotel, so all the physical rooms. It doesn't matter if you block them or not, it will not exclude the blocked rooms. So in Hotsoft, you have the option to use two different occupancy figures. So in this particular database, we're using both G and H. So it's adding the same booked rooms. So you can see confirmed, provisional and allotment are used for both. but the calculation is based on either for sale minus blocked or only for sale. So you will have different percentages that you can view on the hot/soft side. So that would normally be done, for example, in your statistics screen in hot/soft. You can see your different percentages here. So now in this particular example, it's the same figures because I don't have any blocked, so then the percentages would be the same. So now the next question, of course, is which occupancy figure is used in dashboard? How do I know which calculation is being sent to dashboard? And to find that out, we would need to go to our interface configuration in hot/soft. So if you're not familiar with hot/soft and if you don't work with hot/soft, that's absolutely fine. All I want you to understand here really is that you have this option. So it's not going to be always the same calculation. And you need to take that into consideration if you're working with a customer. So when you're setting up the integration with dashboard, you have this setting. So you choose if you want to send occupancy %1 or occupancy %2. And if you don't know which one is which, then you go to the global setting and look at what the hotel is using. But again, the occupancy %1 is the default that we send. So this is really important, especially if you're comparing figures that you have in hot/soft with figures that you have in dashboard, and for example, they don't match up. You need to make sure that you're comparing the right values with each other, so you're not getting confused between the two. So I think we can move on to the second half of the session. So we can look at the hot/soft report. So I will keep using the same hotel, but when we get to the report section, you'll see that we have a lot more options and a lot more flexibility. Of course, it depends on how you're logging in. I'm logging in as hoist staff, which means that I have access to a lot of hotels information. When you're logging in as a hotelier, then of course the options are different. You would only see your own hotel or hotels if you're a chain. So the reports are available here on the left-hand side. And below here we have some examples of reports that I built previously, but for the sake of this session, I think we should be looking at building a new one, so you know how that works. So this particular hot/soft report is giving you the option to build reports based on reservation data from hot/soft. So when we looked at the occupancy widget earlier, I mentioned that it was all calculated by hot/soft, but this report section works slightly different. So what we do here is that we export basically raw reservation data from hot/soft to dashboard, and then we allow them to build reports based on that information. So if I create a new report, there's lots of different report templates in dashboard, of course. So we're focusing only on the hot/soft one today. So I'm selecting that first. Then we need to do a date selection. So we can do a period, we can do a custom, so similar to what we saw in the occupancy widget drill down earlier. So let's do a shorter period. We could do last 7 days, for example. And now this becomes interesting because now we can expand this out and add multiple hotels if you have that access, of course. So if you're a chain, then you can do this for multiple hotels in your group just by adding the location here. If you want to look at a brand group, you can do that in the second selection. And if you want to look at a brand but filter it by, for example, country, you can do that as well. So, for example, if you want to look at your Best Western hotels but only the ones in France, that will be an option that you can do. So once you've done your selections, then you need to select which fields should be displayed in the report. And these are all the ones that are available. So if you're not sure what they are, you should be able to open up any Hotsoft database and find the equivalents in there. So for example, the segment, for example, so looking at opening up a reservation or a project or method, you will have those fields here. So it does help if you're familiar with Hotsoft, of course, then it's easier to know where the values are coming from. So I'm not going to go through all the different data that we have here, but what's a couple of things that are important to know is that we don't send any personal information from Hotsoft to dashboard. So you don't really need to worry too much about GDPR for this because we're not uploading emails or addresses or names of people, only a tool really to build statistics to see, for example, what types of clients you have, why they come, how they booked, things like that. So no personal information about them. We have some information about the guests or the clients, like nationality, gender, country, birth date, things like that, that you might want to be able to track, but it's not linking it to individual people, so it's not something that can identify anyone. So that's a good thing to know, that you don't need to worry about that. Another thing I wanted to mention is that most of these fields, like the room types or the categories, the methods, are set up per hotel. So if you're adding multiple hotels in your report, then you're going to get very different values. So these fields, for example, the interest, the method, the project, can be used for anything. And they're rarely the same between two hotels unless it's specifically be configured to match. So you can't really compare the methods in Hotel A with the methods in Hotel B, because most likely you will have different selections, different values, different purposes. So that's important to know. And yeah, same with room types. Those are configured for each hotel individually, so it can be very different between two hotels, even in the same country. So with this, I can simply remove the fields that I don't want. And then save the report. So once I have the report, I can export it. So this is something that you can do if you just manually want to export the report. So let's see if we can do that. There we go. So this is what it would come out as. So it's reservation, basically, an individual line. on here. So this is all raw data. So where the power comes in is if you use this data to build your own KPIs in Excel, for example, or if you export it to another system. So it gives the hotels the opportunity to export information directly from Hotsoft to dashboard and then get it out this way. So it can be exported as a CSV or an Excel, so whatever they need. I added the hotel serial in here in this example. That really only makes sense if you're using this for multiple hotels. So the hotel serial is our internal number, how we identify customers in the order tool. So if you're including multiple hotels in the report, then you should add the serial so you can keep track of which one is which. And you can filter it by serial, for example, in Excel. What you can also do is enable scheduling. So if you built a nice report that you want to use often, you want to import it into another system, or you built your own KPIs, then you probably want this to be a reoccurring export. So you can choose to export it daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly. You set the time and you set one or more emails for where it should be sent. So this can be a very powerful tool for sure. Okay, that's all I had to cover today.
Great, perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend. Enjoy your weekend.
Too.